Hey, Jennifer.
Hi, Jamie.
Good to
Hello,
see you.
everyone. Welcome to the Common Sense Education Chat, a proactive approach to social media challenges. My name's Jennifer Ehehalt, and I'm the Senior Regional Manager for Common Sense Education. And joining me today is my most wonderful colleague, Jamie Nunez from Bay Area. Hi, Jamie.
How you doing, Jennifer? Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon or this morning or this evening. Pleasure to see or connect with you all today.
Awesome. This conversation will be posted on our Common Sense Ed YouTube channel, along with all the links and resources that we chat about today. So let's get started. So, to kick things off and really frame our conversation today, we know that young people are constantly turning to social media to connect with their peers, right? Whether it's your second grader arguing over a Roblox game or a 10th grader participating in a TikTok challenge, the need to feel connected and accepted is very real for our kids. And so recently, we've seen an uptick in a number of incidents pertaining to social media challenges. So, with that being said, over the next 30 minutes, we wanted to really go take a deep dive into these challenges and provide you with a proactive approach in addressing the digital dilemmas that we're all grappling with. So I'm going to turn it over to Jamie, and we're going to take you through an experience together.
Amazing, Jennifer. Listen, thank you. And if you are wondering, if you're struggling, if you're curious about how to address some of these challenges or some of these dilemmas that our kids are grappling with in everyday digital life, yeah, sit back because we're going to provide you with an insight and some support on how you address them. So here's what we're going to do. We know that there are many challenges circulating across different platforms. We're going to run you through one of these challenges. We're going to add on the chat for you all what we are seeing as upcoming challenges through TikTok. We're going to use the platform TikTok to actually address some of them. But we're going to run you through one of these. This is the upcoming, what we perceive to be the upcoming challenge, the Kiss Your BFF, as an example to kind of work through a process that you can address. And let me first also start off by saying, as Jennifer and I talk about this, we really want to encourage you all to move away from reactive connections or reactive kind of methodology or approach. We know that there are severe sort of implications for a community when our kids perform these challenges. We know that they're often victims. It's very difficult to kind of create learning environments when we know these things are happening, but we want to provide you kind of a more proactive approach to that. All right, so we all ready? You ready for this? Jennifer, you ready for this? Hopefully it's a little not too interesting, you know?
I'm ready. I'm ready. I just want our
No.
audience to be able to see us and model this so that it feels easy for them to take and use with their students.
All right, here we go.
So
So
yeah,
the
let's do it.
first thing we're going to do is we want you to name that challenge. So what exactly is the challenge that's coming up? In this case, this is your KISS, your BFF. This is an attempt at one of these challenges that are happening on TikTok, where folks might or kids might be kissing someone's boyfriend or girlfriend's boyfriend. It's very irrelevant. What we want to sort of name is the fact that these challenges exist. So what exactly is a challenge that you're grappling with, that you're seeing, that you might actually create? Once you understand what it is, what exactly is actually happening, the second thing we want to do is really start to identify who is actually involved. So is this a participant? Is this an audience? Is this a creator? Who are the players involved that we want to identify and move through? Jennifer, as you sort of think about who's involved in this particular challenge, Kiss Your BFF, who would you sort of envision being the participant or the audience or the creator in this case?
Well, with any type of challenge, there's always somebody that's thought of it, right? So the creator, the person behind these ideas, the lists, the challenges themselves. There's also the bystanders, the folks that are like the viewers, the folks that are, the kids and people that are just seeing it happen, either in real time or, through their social threads. And then there's also the participants, the people actually participating in these challenges, taking videos of their actions. So it can be a very large group of people.
Yeah. And if you're on the call today and you are a teacher or you represent elementary age students, what I would encourage you to think about, if this particular challenge doesn't apply to your students, think about the trickle down effect, meaning how younger students view things that are happening in platforms that they may not have access to. So I want to just encourage you to kind of think openly about the challenge itself and how it actually has ramifications across the board. So once you understand who is involved, the next thing we want to get into is how might we actually think and what is each person feeling about the incident itself. So we might say that the creator itself is looking to gain attention. Right? We might say, well, maybe if I post this or if I do this, I might actually have an increased amount of likes. I might have an extra connection. Right? A participant might feel they might be different than the creator, but they might feel the need or they might feel the pressure to then replicate that challenge. This is where things become very viral very quickly. So there's an actual internal pressure that if I don't actually participate, then I might not be validated by not only the creators, but everyone else that follows me. So we want to be kind of mindful of addressing how each person is actually feeling and empathize and be honest about, where they actually might be addressing or where they might be grappling with some of these issues. And then finally, if you are passively viewing or you're the audience, as Jennifer pointed out, you might have a sense of helplessness, meaning like you don't necessarily know what you want to feel when you see that on screen. Or maybe you actually feel a little uncomfortable because that you don't want to participate in that, but yet this is something that everyone else is viewing, and this is kind of fodder and the conversation starters that are happening at lunchtime. So again, be mindful about how each person is feeling when you start to identify what this particular challenge is. Jennifer, any thoughts on that? Like I don't know, how would you feel in that case? It's interesting. I'd feel a little icky being a kind of a viewer, but what are your
I
thoughts
know.
on
And
that?
the way we're taking us through this, it's very easy to assume this is what the people involved are feeling. So I want you to keep in mind that as an educator in your classroom, an administrator, the idea is really to create a safe space for students to share their feelings. We're making it look very easy. Of course they want attention, but there could be a lot of underlying background, foundation, things that have led up to these particular challenges that are happening. So making sure you have that space and listening, and asking the right questions to get to the bottom of the feelings and everybody involved. So just wanted to point that out so that, yeah.
Absolutely, Jennifer. And again, these challenges, these things that are actually happening might bring up some feelings that make us feel, or might make us feel a little uncomfortable, right? That queasy sort of feeling, or we might feel like we want to react and immediately go to resolving the issue. But our aim and our invitation here is to think more broadly, again, think critically about what is actually happening with your student body in terms of what they need at that time, and how is it reinforcing a positive culture across your community. All right, so once we've done that, we've sort of identified what is happening. The next set is really thinking about, well, what would actually happen? So we want to actually envision options, right? And what that actually means is we want to think about what are unique ways, what are ways in which students can actually resolve the challenge or mitigate the challenge or think of something else instead of participating in a challenge in order to reinforce a positive school culture, right? So you might, we're going to give you a number of tips, but one of them might be where you come up with actual solutions to the challenge itself. Hey, kids, we know that this might actually be coming up as a student body. Let's think about ways that we might reinforce a positive connection with your peers, or a positive connection in terms of sharing what a healthy relationship might look like. Right, so we want to kind of think, what are the unique ways that we can be proactive about these issues? Jennifer, as you kind of think about this particular dilemma or this particular challenge, what are unique ways that you think school teachers or administrators can actually be proactive about these issues?
I think this is an important one to spend time on in the group, brainstorming, thinking everything from the littlest things that can be done now, tomorrow, next week, and beyond. And so brainstorming and creating a list of anything possible is really important. And then narrowing it down to, okay, what's going to fit our culture? How do we get the student perspective? Because that's another piece, right?
Yeah.
Getting the students to brainstorm these options, and the deeper you can go with their thinking, the better.
Absolutely. And as you're sitting back and listening to this, what we want to really encourage you is to really make that the students that have agency and advocacy behind actually resolving some of these issues, right? So you might consider reaching this, or reaching out to your student body, either having through clubs or addressing some of the underlying issues that is actually happening across your school site. You might suggest to the student body that we want to sign a pledge not to participate, or to participate in an alternative challenge that might reinforce something, again, positive for your community. So you want to think more importantly, and again, the theme here is to highlight what the positive contributions are, or positive alternatives might actually be to this particular challenge or any other challenge that you are seeing. And then I think this is a really big one, which is thinking out loud as you envision options, really thinking about the downsides to any of the suggestions that have come up. And that is like, what are things that perhaps as an administration or as a teacher, what are things that you know aren't realistic for actual students? Jennifer, you want to say kind of more about what that looks like? Just kind of expand on that point.
Yeah, I think that this piece is just making sure we're meeting students where they're at, right? And it's relevant, and it's something that they can buy into and want to move forward. And so obviously, as administrators and educators within your buildings, you understand the culture. So you understand, the ways you can pivot. You understand, upcoming events, activities going on in your building. So how can you tie those initiatives to building this culture around a positive online presence?
Man, Jennifer, I love working with you. I love that statement. It's so fun. Thank you for that. And then, so finally, after you've envisioned your options, after you created a space where students can actually envision an alternative or a different option, the final thing we want to do is we want to actually take action, right? And what exactly do we mean by that? We want to kind of break down a few things for you. First is how are you actually going to communicate what is being shared about this particular challenge? And I know if you're an administrator on the call, you might be thinking, well, Jamie, Jennifer, I'm going to send out an email. I'm going to have a letter sent out. We're going to have an entire meeting addressing the consequences. If you actually partake in this challenge, these are going to be the consequences. And again, I think we want to validate that and say that's a great start, or that's a great way to do that. But we want to encourage you to also think, again, much more proactive about how that actually might impact students beyond the consequences that you shared. So first, you want to actually think about and reflect and address how you might actually want to communicate any upcoming challenges or things that you might see happening across your school site over the next few months. And then the second piece is, what do you actually want to say, right? So Jennifer, what do we sort of mean by that? What exactly do they want to say?
I gotta say, I don't want you to feel alone if you're thinking this one's the hardest part or the hardest step to consider and really follow through with. Going back to my parenting style, you must follow through with whatever you're doing. And so, you identified the how, is this in person? Is it, offline? Is it a direct message? Depending on whatever the dilemma is. But I think really making it a comfortable outcome. It's easy to say, I'm going to write an email. It's really easy to say, we're going to get everybody together and we're going to talk about this, and here's the consequence. That feels really easy, but I think in the moment, you need to think about all of the different ways this can be addressed and what fits. It's almost like what outcome fits the punishment, or what punishment fits the action, right? And so I think just asking questions around, do you think the person involved would really say that? So thinking about stuff that's being said and portrayed online is much easier than face to face. So after going through all these online scenarios and dilemmas, it can be tricky to pull people offline and get them face to face and talk to one another. So I want to make sure that you're thinking through how this might look. It might have to be siloed at first. It might have to be smaller groups at first. And then you grow into the bigger groups and the bigger culture. But starting small might be the way to go so that everyone feels comfortable with how the resolution became.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And I really echo that on so many levels, right? So what we've essentially just gone through is an overview of one of our many sort of ways in which we address digital dilemmas. And what you've had the privilege to kind of engage with us is really thinking critically about like an actual process to how we address digital dilemmas in general. So there's a number of I don't know, what would you sort
Well,
of
I think
call
we
them,
should,
Jennifer? Yeah, I
yeah,
think we're
first
going
of
to
all,
pause for a second and just pivot.
I just want to make sure they get the student handout, because we essentially took the student handout and walked you through the thinking routine, is what we call them at Common Sense. So this thinking routine, so we're going to go ahead and drop that in the chat and make sure you have this as a takeaway. But this thinking routine is really what we modeled for you, and they're really meant to be used repeatedly with students so they can have those thought structures which are useful to apply dilemmas. I mean, we focused our dilemma on challenges because they're really at the forefront right now. But I can guarantee you will agree with me that your students are grappling with digital dilemmas every day, big or small, whether it's, fear of missing out, whether it's, dealing with fake accounts, inappropriate videos and photos being shared with friends, just different dares, so to speak, right? It's like this whole dare and the feeling of, communicating online in a safe, respectful way. So this handout, I can tell you, make a few copies of it. It's really easy to just drop that dilemma in the moment. Okay, guys, close your books. Let's just stop everything and let's think through this so that everybody feels good about this at the end of the day. So we, again, took you through the thinking routine that really addresses the feelings and options. So there's 3 different buckets we sort of put these routines in. Jamie, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the other 2 buckets, because this one was the feelings and options section.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I will give you folks on the call and folks that receive this resource, I will give you a chance to peruse through each of those handouts. We have another one that is around digital habits, ensuring that our kids are creating the types of habits needed to feel or have a connections with their particular peers. So you can go through that habit, or you can go through that handout as a way to reinforce a number of those skills necessary for folks or for your kids to actually have a connection. And then we have another handout pertaining to taking a stand. So we don't simply want to ensure that our kids are following the rules. We want to ensure that their voice, their agency is actually being heard, to sort of promote not only civic engagement, but also to promote where they stand in any particular issue, right? So we want to make sure that there's that, not necessarily freedom, but that openness to actually have those conversations and do that in a way that is actually not following the rules and the parameters of your school as you set out. And I think what we're both really coming up to, and if we can kind of sum this up into how you might be thinking about these routines or these handouts or the handouts that we've shared with you, is like fourfold. The first is, as much as you can, stay impartial. It's really easy to have your bias around tech use and where your kids actually feel and how you feel about technology and whether or not these things are impacting your community. You might say, Jamie, we don't have any toilet paper because our kids have stolen everything, right? And that's perfectly okay to be angry and to provide those consequences or have consequences for kids, but we want to really encourage you to stay impartial to the reasons why kids are actually participating in these challenges. We want you to ensure that as you introduce challenges, make it relevant, right? And again, this is not, we're not asking you to then create a TikTok account and then follow every challenge that's actually happening, but be mindful of the actual pulse of what's happening in your school. We're going to give you a resource on how you do that in a second. So think about, like, who are those players, who are those students that actually can provide you that information every month? Maybe you want to highlight that, right? What are the things that we're seeing across digital media that we all can learn from as a community? These are things that might be really helpful. As Jennifer pointed out, be able to personalize it, right? Like, Jennifer, what challenge do you think you're going to see with your 5 or 6-year-old? Who might be saying nothing, like eat an Oreo cookie challenge or something. I don't know what's happening with your little ones, but we want to make sure that you personalize it both to the development of your kids, as well as to what their needs are in that particular moment, right? Is there a need to be validated? Is there a need to actually feel heard? Personalize the dilemma to the needs and the environment that is actually happening across your site. And then finally, Jennifer, what is our 4th one? I guess creating norms, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yep, creating norms, making sure that those classroom norms or the school norms are set ahead of time. And norms, we mean expectations. What is proper, what's appropriate, what's accepted, when it comes to having these conversations. Because again, we're always promoting it's okay to disagree, but it's not okay to be hateful or rude or disrespectful towards that perspective. And so I think combining all of that with these conversations is a really big help.
Yeah, so we're going to look at you. We're going to empower you. If you're a teacher on this call, like, you got this, okay? Don't be scared of these challenges anymore from this day forward. Like, we're going to tackle them head on.
And Jamie, you know what? We have to make sure we give them the gold, right? The gold is our entire library of example digital dilemmas, along with the handouts and all the questions you can ask. And so I say this because, you know, it's been extremely well received over the last few weeks as I talk to educators, giving them just a guide, making it feel like, okay, I don't have all the answers and I'm not sure what's right or wrong sometimes. And that's okay. It's giving the students a space, letting them know you see them and you see that this is, you know, not appropriate. And how can I talk about it in my classroom to show them I care and I want to give them some strategies, some thinking routines to help them with what they're grappling with. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, dig into those
Absolutely.
dilemmas, change the names if you have to of the students, you know, change and tweak it a little bit. Those are all already there for you. And I can guarantee when I show them, they're like, oh, yep, we had that one last month. Yep, this one happened yesterday. Unfortunately or fortunately, they're very relevant and they speak to a lot of administrators and educators. So make sure you grab that resource, take a look at those tips, and I think you'll be really thankful when you experience your first one together.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm going to reference just a minute ago, I said to ensure that you are aware of the digital climate and what's happening across your site. Where we're going to throw in the chat for you is a sample digital climate survey where you can actually provides you with questions that you might be able to ask or your community, your students, your parents about what is actually happening and how your students or your community is actually using digital media. So. All right, let's close off, Jennifer. What are the key takeaways? What should folks know after 20 minutes of connecting with us?
I mean, we're going to throw those takeaways in the chat so you have all of the links. But, you know, I think my key takeaway is just understanding and feeling confident around having these conversations in your classroom as it relates to what your students are experiencing and going through. And so this guide, I think, really speaks to educators.
Yeah, and I would say my key takeaway is be able to empathize with where your students are at in this entire process. We know we've just come out of a year plus where our students were inundated with technology. I think it's really important to kind of note and validate that our kids want to be seen. Just how they're seen is something that we have to ensure that we're guiding them for. But you all have this. This is not an amazing part to address challenges like kissing your BFF, but hopefully we'll make the experience much more real and thoughtful for you.
And also keep in mind, this doesn't happen overnight. Give yourself time. It takes time to build a habit, first of all. It takes time to put the students through these experiences of the thinking routines. But by being here today, gathering these resources and making a plan, that's what's making you proactive. So don't give up. Keep going. Keep bringing it to the forefront, and eventually you will start to see some impact being made and some shifts in some of the online relationships that your students are creating and fostering. So I hope that this helped. Jamie, do you have any other things to close out on?
No,
any other last comments?
Wish you all a beautiful start to your week. And if you haven't had a chance, take a moment. If you need credit or if you need validation that you participate in today's survey, we've linked up the survey for you on the chat. Please give us some feedback. Otherwise, continue being amazing educators or administrators or folks on the call. And thank you all for being alive. Appreciate it. Thanks, Jennifer. You're a blessing.
Thank you.